In the middle of a deadly blizzard on Route 89, a single mother counted her last $38 with only 5 days before eviction. At her darkest hour, 20 frozen Hell's Angels knocked on her door, seeking shelter from the storm. Without hesitation, she opened her home and shared her children's last meal. By sunrise, the roar of 100 motorcycles shook her driveway. Before we begin, what time are you watching? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell us your story. Maria Rodriguez stood in her cramped kitchen, staring at the pile of bills spread across the chipped counter. $38. That was all that remained between her and the street. Her hands trembled as she read the eviction notice one more time. 5 days. 5 days to come up with $2,400 in back rent, or she and her 3 children would have nowhere to go. Outside, the Montana wind howled like a wounded animal. Snow fell in thick, angry sheets, transforming the world beyond her trailer's windows into a white void. The Weather Service had issued a blizzard warning, predicting whiteout conditions and temperatures dropping to 20 below zero. Maria pulled her worn sweater tighter around her thin frame. At 32 years old, she looked older. Life had carved deep lines into her face, but her dark eyes still held fierce determination. The determination of a mother who would do anything to protect her children. She paused at the bedroom where her 3 kids slept. Miguel was 8, Sophia was 6, and little Carlos had just turned 4. They were curled together for warmth under every blanket Maria owned. The trailer's heating system was broken, and she couldn't afford to fix it. Maria had been alone for 3 years now, ever since her husband Diego was deported back to Mexico. One day he was there, working 2 jobs to support his family. The next day, he was gone, leaving Maria with 3 young children, a mountain of debt, and a broken heart. She'd tried everything to make ends meet. 2 jobs at minimum wage, cleaning houses during the day, and working nights at a gas station. But it wasn't enough. The bills kept coming, the rent kept rising, and her children kept growing. No matter how hard she worked, she was always one emergency away from disaster. Maria opened the refrigerator. Half a gallon of milk, some eggs, a little cheese, and yesterday's beans and rice. Enough for maybe 2 more meals if she stretched it. She'd already skipped dinner tonight, telling the kids she'd eaten at work. It was a lie she told often these days. The clock read 9:47 p.m. Too late to be awake, but Maria couldn't sleep. Not with that eviction notice burning a hole in her conscience. Not knowing that in 5 days, her babies might be sleeping in a shelter. Or worse, separated into different foster homes while she tried to get back on her feet. She was reaching for the coffee pot when she heard it. A sound that cut through the howling wind. Engines, multiple engines struggling against the storm. Maria moved to the window and pressed her face against the cold glass. At first, she saw nothing but white. Then, slowly, shapes began to emerge from the blizzard. Motorcycles. Big ones, Harleys, and they were pulling into her driveway. Her heart began to race. She lived alone on this stretch of Route 89, miles from the nearest neighbor. The trailer park had been condemned 2 years ago, and everyone else had moved out. But Maria had nowhere to go, so she'd stayed in this isolated spot, praying nothing bad would happen. As the bikes pulled closer, their headlights cutting through the snow, Maria saw something that made her pause. These riders were in trouble. They were covered in ice, their bikes struggling through snowdrifts that were already knee-deep. One bike fishtailed dangerously before its rider managed to steady it. The lead rider dismounted first. He was massive, easily 6'5", with shoulders that seemed to fill her entire window frame. As he pulled off his helmet, Maria could see ice crusted in his black beard and frost coating his leather jacket. Behind him, More riders were dismounting. She counted quickly. 20 bikes. 20 men, all wearing the same patches on their backs, the Death's Head logo, the winged skull, the words that made her blood run cold. Hell's Angels. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She'd seen news stories, heard the rumors. The Hell's Angels were one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in America. Outlaws, criminals, dangerous men who lived by their own rules. The lead rider approached her door, and Maria instinctively stepped back. Every instinct screamed at her to leave it locked, to turn off the lights and pretend no one was home, to protect her children at all costs. But then she looked past the first man to the others behind him. They were shaking, not from fear, but from cold so intense it had to be life-threatening. She saw one younger rider stumble as he tried to dismount, his movements sluggish and uncoordinated. Hypothermia. She recognized the signs from a first aid class she'd taken years ago. Another rider was being supported by 2 others, his face a dangerous shade of white. His lips were blue. These men weren't just cold. They were dying. Maria thought of her children sleeping in the next room. She thought of Diego, who used to say that being human meant helping others even when it cost you something. She thought about the kind of person she wanted her children to become. The knock came. 3 firm raps that somehow managed to be both urgent and respectful. Maria took a deep breath, whispered a prayer, and unlocked the door. The blast of cold air hit her like a physical blow. The lead rider stood on her small porch, ice crusting every surface of his body. Snow had frozen in his eyebrows, his beard, even his eyelashes. Up close, Maria could see he was older than she'd thought, maybe 50, with gray threading through his black hair and beard. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw, but his eyes, pale blue and sharp as winter ice, held something she hadn't expected. Respect. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough from the cold. "I know this is asking a lot, but we're in serious trouble. We've been riding for 6 hours trying to outrun this storm, and we're not going to make it much further. The highway's completely blocked about 5 miles back. We saw your lights and thought maybe if you had a garage or even a porch." Behind him, the other riders were gathering, their breath creating clouds of steam in the frigid air. They looked terrifying, all leather and patches and hard faces. Tattoos covered every visible inch of skin. Scars told stories of violence and hard living. But they also looked like men at the end of their rope. "How many of you are there?" Maria asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. 20, the man replied. "I'm Thomas Kane. We're from the Iron Mountain chapter, heading back from a memorial service in Wyoming. One of our brothers passed. We've got money for food, whatever you need. We just need somewhere warm to wait out this storm. Even just the garage would be enough." Maria looked past Thomas at the assembled bikers. 20 Hell's Angels, in her home, with her children sleeping just down the hall. It went against everything she'd ever been taught about safety and caution. But then she saw the young one stumble again, and another rider catch him before he fell. She saw hands that shook too hard to grip properly, faces turning the dangerous red-white of severe frostbite. She saw the way they looked at her door, not with menace, but with desperate hope. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "All of you." The relief on Thomas's face was immediate and profound. For a moment, this hard, scarred man looked like he might cry. "Thank you," he said simply. "You have no idea what this means. If you believe in helping others even when you have nothing left to give, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with everyone who needs to be reminded that kindness still exists." The Hell's Angels filed in one by one, stomping snow off their boots and shaking ice from their jackets. They were enormous men, the kind who'd learned early that size kept them safe in a dangerous world. Their leather cuts creaked as they moved, patches catching the dim light. President, Sergeant at Arms, Road Captain, Enforcer, each title more intimidating than the last. But despite their fearsome appearance, they moved carefully in the small trailer, conscious of their size. Maria watched in amazement as the oldest member, a man who looked to be in his 60s with a completely gray beard, actually removed his boots before stepping onto her carpet. The young one who'd stumbled was helped inside by two others, guided gently to the couch like he was precious cargo. "Find seats wherever you can," Maria told them, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll make coffee." The trailer wasn't built for 21 people. It was barely big enough for Maria and her 3 children. But the bikers arranged themselves with surprising efficiency. Some took the couch and chairs. Others sat on the floor with their backs against walls, a position Maria recognized from military movies. Always watching the exits. Always ready. The youngest was given the best spot near the kitchen where warm air from the stove could reach him. As the coffee brewed, Maria took stock of her unexpected guests. They were terrifying to look at. Scars, tattoos covering every visible inch of skin, hard faces that had seen too many fights. One man had what looked like a bullet wound scar on his neck. Another was missing part of his ear. These were men who'd lived hard lives in a harder world. But she also noticed other things. The way they checked on each other, especially the younger ones. The respect they showed her space, not touching anything without permission. The quiet, "Thank you, ma'am," each one offered as she handed them coffee in her mismatched mugs. The way they made sure everyone else was settled before relaxing themselves. Thomas settled onto a kitchen stool, his large frame making it look like dollhouse furniture. Up close, Maria could see more details of his jacket. Service ribbons suggesting military background, a Purple Heart pin, an American flag patch, a small cross dangling from a chain around his neck. "You live here alone?" Thomas asked, his voice low and respectful. Maria nodded toward the hallway. "With my 3 kids, they're sleeping." Something softened in Thomas's eyes. "Then we're doubly grateful. Taking in 20 strangers with kids in the house that's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Maybe both," Maria admitted, her hands shaking slightly as she poured more coffee. "But you looked like you were dying out there." "We were," said another biker, a massive black man who introduced himself as Marcus. "Another hour in that storm and we'd have started losing people. Hypothermia doesn't care how tough you are. You saved our lives tonight, and we won't forget that." By midnight, the storm had only gotten worse. According to the emergency radio that crackled on Maria's counter, Route 89 was closed in both directions. Multiple vehicles were stranded. Rescue crews couldn't reach them. No estimate for when the roads might reopen. The National Weather Service was calling it the worst blizzard to hit Montana in 20 years. Maria stood at her counter, doing calculations that made her stomach churn. 20 men, minimal food, and $38. She had maybe enough eggs and cheese to feed her kids breakfast. After that, there was nothing. And she couldn't exactly ask these men to leave in a storm that was literally killing people. She looked at the bikers scattered throughout her living room. Most had shed their heavy jackets, revealing more tattoos, more scars, more evidence of lives lived on the edge. But they were relaxing now, the danger of hypothermia passing as warmth returned to their bodies. They talked quietly among themselves, voices low and respectful of her sleeping children. Sophia appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama?" she said, her small voice cutting through the low rumble of male conversation. "Why are there so many people here?" The room went completely silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to look at the little girl in her faded pink pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Maria moved quickly, placing herself between her daughter and the bikers. But Thomas was faster. He stood up and walked to the far corner, making himself smaller, less threatening. The other bikers followed his lead, several turning away to appear less intimidating. "It's okay, sweetheart," Maria said, kneeling to Sophia's level. "These men were caught in the storm. They needed help. Remember what Papa used to say? We help people who need it." Sophia looked at the assembled bikers with the fearless curiosity only a 6-year-old could muster. "Are you cold?" she asked. "We were," said the young biker from the couch. His name was Danny, and up close, Maria could see he couldn't be more than 21 or 22. "But your mama saved us. She's a hero." "Mama saves everybody," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "That's what she does. She saved a puppy once, and she helped Miss Jenkins when she fell down." Miguel appeared next, followed by little Carlos. Her 3 children stood in the hallway, staring at the room full of massive, tattooed bikers with wide eyes. Maria held her breath, waiting for fear, for tears, for the reaction any reasonable child might have to finding their home filled with strangers. Instead of fear, Miguel's eyes went wide with excitement. "Cool motorcycles," he exclaimed, pointing toward the window where the bikes were barely visible through the snow. "Are those Harleys? What kind? Do you ride fast?" The tension in the room broke like a snapped rubber band. Several bikers chuckled, and Maria saw genuine smiles replace hard expressions. These dangerous men, these notorious outlaws, were grinning at her son's enthusiasm. "You like bikes, little man?" Thomas asked, his voice gentle. Miguel nodded enthusiastically. "My papa had a motorcycle, a red one, before he went away." Maria's throat tightened. Diego's bike had been repossessed 3 months after his deportation, along with almost everything else of value they'd owned. Thomas looked at Maria, and she saw understanding in his eyes. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry into her pain. He just nodded. "Well, when this storm clears, maybe we can show you some real motorcycles. Would you like that?" Miguel's face lit up like Christmas morning. The kids, with the remarkable adaptability that only children possess, accepted the presence of 20 Hell's Angels with ease. Sophia climbed onto Marcus's lap and asked him to tell her a story about motorcycles. Carlos showed another biker his collection of toy cars, lining them up on the coffee table with serious concentration. And Miguel peppered Thomas with endless questions about bikes, riding, and what it was like to be in a motorcycle club. Maria watched from the kitchen, her heart in her throat. These dangerous, notorious outlaws were being incredibly gentle with her children. They spoke softly, listened patiently, and treated her babies with unexpected kindness. Marcus told Sophia an elaborate story about a princess who rode a motorcycle. Another biker, who introduced himself as Jake, got down on the floor to play cars with Carlos. Thomas answered every one of Miguel's questions with patience and honesty. By 2 a.m., Maria had made a decision. She took the last of the beans and rice and stretched them into a thin stew with the remaining vegetables and whatever spices she had. It was barely enough, but it was hot, and it would help. She served it in mismatched bowls, apologizing for the small portions. "This is perfect," Thomas said, accepting his bowl with both hands like it was something precious. "Best meal we've had all day." "We left Wyoming at 6 this morning," Marcus added. "Been riding for 17 hours. Most of us haven't eaten since breakfast." The bikers ate slowly, stretching every bite. Maria noticed how they gave most of their food to the younger ones, Thomas slipping half his portion to Miguel, Jake doing the same for Sophia. Hardened men, but with gentle hands when it came to her kids. After dinner, exhaustion took over. Some bikers slept on the floor, others sat guard by the doors and windows, taking shifts like soldiers. Maria tucked her kids in, still wide-eyed with excitement. "Mama," Sophia whispered, "are those men angels?" Maria thought about how they'd appeared from the storm, protecting her family. "Maybe they are," she said softly. "Angels don't always look how we expect." When she returned to the living room, Thomas was by the window. "Your kids are beautiful," he said quietly. "You're doing good with them." Maria smiled sadly. "I'm trying. It's just hard. Working 2 jobs never enough." Thomas nodded. "I saw the eviction notice." "That's my problem." "How much?" She hesitated. "About 3,000, with fees." He sighed, then stood. "Get some rest. I've got calls to make." In the freezing night, Maria watched him outside, pacing and talking on the phone, his voice rising above the wind. 20 minutes later, he came back covered in snow but smiling. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "you'll see." Dawn came bright and silent. The storm had passed. Maria woke to the smell of coffee and the distant thunder of engines. She ran to the window. Down Route 89 stretched a line of motorcycles that seemed endless, hundreds of them, roaring in unison. "What is this?" she whispered. Thomas grinned. "This is brotherhood. Word got out that you saved 20 Iron Mountain Angels." The riders filled her yard, her street, every inch of space. Bikers from across the West, California, Idaho, Arizona, all united by what Maria had done. A massive man stepped off one of the lead bikes, graybeard, tattoos, President California on his vest. "Maria Rodriguez?" he said. She nodded, trembling. "I'm Big Sam. You opened your home to our brothers, fed them when you had almost nothing. You saved their lives." He reached into his jacket and handed her a thick envelope. $25,000, every chapter chipped in. No loans, no payback, just thanks. Maria shook her head, overwhelmed. "I can't." Another biker spoke up. "You gave us our sons back. That's worth more than money?" Thomas stepped forward with a folded document. "One more thing. We bought your trailer and the land it's on. It's yours now, free and clear. No more eviction notices." Maria covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face as her kids ran to her. Outside, the roar of engines filled the cold air, not of outlaws, but of angels on wheels. Maria felt her knees buckle. Danny, the young biker from last night, caught her before she fell and gently helped her into a chair. "But that's not all," Big Sam continued, his gravel voice somehow gentle. "We're setting up a trust fund for your children's education. Full ride to any college they want to attend. We're also establishing you as an official Hells Angels safe house. Any brother in trouble, anywhere in the country can come here for help. In return, you'll receive monthly payments to maintain the property and cover your expenses. Call it a salary." "Why?" Maria whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this?" Big Sam knelt down so he was at her eye level. This enormous, intimidating man, president of one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in America, knelt in her trailer with tears in his own eyes. "Because," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you reminded us of who we're supposed to be. We talk about brotherhood, about loyalty, about taking care of our own. But you, a single mother with nothing, showed more brotherhood last night than some of us have shown our entire lives. You didn't see patches or reputation. You saw human beings who needed help, and you helped them. That's the kind of person we're supposed to protect." Marcus stepped forward. 20 years ago, someone saved my life. A stranger who had no reason to help me. I was stranded in the desert, running from a bad situation. This old woman gave me water, food, a place to sleep. She asked no questions. I never forgot that kindness. Last night you saved my brothers, including my nephew. How could I not pay it forward?" Another biker spoke, a man with a scar across his throat. "You trusted us with your children. Do you understand how profound that is? You looked past our reputation, our appearance, and saw human beings. That kind of faith, that kind of courage deserves to be rewarded. The kids had come into the living room, staring wide-eyed at the assembled bikers filling every inch of space. Big Sam turned his attention to them, his intimidating presence softening completely. "You kids have a very special mama," he said gently, speaking directly to Miguel, Sofia, and Carlos. "She's got the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. And because of that, the Hells Angels are now your family. If anyone ever tries to hurt you, if you ever need anything, you have 100 uncles ready to protect you. Understand?" Miguel nodded solemnly, his 8-year-old face serious. "We'll protect Mama too." "I know you will, little man," Big Sam said with a smile. Sophia, ever the direct one, asked, "Can we ride the motorcycles now?" The room erupted in laughter, deep and genuine. "When you're older," Big Sam promised. "But yeah, someday we'll teach you to ride." For the next 2 hours, Maria's trailer was the center of the biggest Hells Angels gathering Montana had ever seen. The bikers took turns meeting her children, sharing stories, explaining the significance of what had happened. They spoke of brotherhood, of the code they lived by, of how rare it was to find someone who truly embodied the values they claimed to uphold. Thomas approached with another envelope. "This is from Tommy Patterson. He's a trucker from Oregon. He says you helped him change a tire in a snowstorm 3 years ago, refused payment, gave him coffee and sandwiches. He's been trying to find you ever since to say thank you." Inside was $5,000 and a note written in shaky handwriting. "For 3 years, I've carried the memory of your kindness. When I heard what you did for the Angels, I knew it was you. Time to return the favor." More envelopes appeared. A teacher whose car Maria had helped push out of a ditch. A waitress Maria had given her last $20 to when the woman's daughter needed medicine. A mechanic whose family Mariah had brought groceries to when he was out of work. "You've been leaving a trail of saved lives for years," Big Sam explained. "You just never knew it. Every person you helped told someone else. Every kindness rippled outward. Last night that trail led your salvation right to your door." Big Sam handed her one final item. A leather vest with beautiful embroidery and a custom patch that said, "Hells Angels Family" and "Iron Mountain Guardian." "You're one of us now," Big Sam said simply. "Honorary member. First woman ever to receive this honor in our chapter, and we protect our own." The ceremony was informal but deeply meaningful. Each president stepped forward to sign the vest, making it official. Thomas added his signature last, his hand steady despite the emotion on his scarred face. As the motorcycles roared to life and began pulling out, creating thunder that echoed off the mountains, Maria stood in her driveway with her children. The kids waved wildly at the departing bikers, who honked their horns and revved their engines in response. Thomas was the last to leave. He'd helped coordinate everything, made all the calls, orchestrated the gathering. He gave Maria a hug that lifted her off her feet. "Keep that light on," he said. "You never know who might need saving." "How can I ever thank you?" Maria asked. "You already did," Thomas replied. "You opened your door. That's all the thanks any of us need." He mounted his bike, kicked it to life, and with a final wave, rode off into the Montana morning. 6 months later, Maria's trailer looked nothing like before. The Hells Angels had rebuilt it. New rooms for each child, working heat, a real kitchen, even a garage and a small bunkhouse for visiting riders. Thanks to monthly support from the club, Maria quit her night job. She still cleaned houses, but now she was home for dinner, helping with homework, tucking her kids in without exhaustion weighing her down. Miguel's grades shot up. Sophia started dance classes. Little Carlos never went to bed hungry again. The kids talked constantly about their motorcycle uncles. Those uncles visited often, bringing groceries, fixing things, taking Miguel to baseball games. They taught the kids about loyalty, respect, and what family really means. The trust fund the club started kept growing, now over $100,000, enough to send all 3 kids to college. But what mattered most wasn't the money. It was the family Maria had found, a brotherhood of leather and steel that showed up when the world didn't. The trailer on Route 89 became known in biker circles as the Guardian's Place, a home where any Hell's Angel could find a warm meal and safety, just like that night in the blizzard, when kindness changed everything. If this story has moved you, if it's reminded you that kindness still exists in this world, then please hit that like button. Share this video with everyone you know. Subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing you stories that prove humanity's best qualities are still alive and thriving. Drop a comment below. Have you ever helped a stranger in need? Has someone ever helped you when you had nothing to give in return? Your story might inspire someone else to open their door, to be the light in someone's darkness. The Hell's Angels still ride Route 89 on their way to destinations unknown. But now, when they pass Maria's trailer, they honk their horns 3 times. A salute, a thank you. A reminder that one woman's kindness on a cold winter night changed everything. Maria stands on her porch and waves back, her children beside her, all of them wrapped in the knowledge that they are protected, loved, and part of something bigger than themselves. The leather vest hangs by her door, a symbol of the family she gained when she chose compassion over fear. The light is always on at Maria's place. The coffee is always hot. The door is always open to those who need help. Because that's what guardians do. And sometimes, when the Montana wind howls and snow falls like it did that first night, Maria thinks about how close she came to keeping that door locked, how different her life would be if fear had won over compassion. She teaches her children about that moment every chance she gets, about the choice between fear and compassion, about how opening your door to strangers in need can change everything, about how angels don't always look like you expect them to. Miguel already talks about joining the Hell's Angels when he grows up. Sophia wants to open her own safe house someday. Carlos just wants to make sure everyone has enough to eat, because he remembers what it felt like to be hungry. Maria Rodriguez sheltered 20 freezing Hell's Angels one winter night. By morning, she'd gained 100 brothers, financial security, and a family that would protect her forever. But more than that, she'd reminded the world that kindness matters, that compassion is never wasted, that the smallest act of generosity can ripple outward in ways you can't possibly imagine, that sometimes the people who look the most dangerous are the ones who will protect you the fiercest. Keep that light on. Open that door. You never know when you might be entertaining angels. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in the power of human kindness. Join us in sharing meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe.